Hey Gary, how are you, man?
Ollie, hey, great to see you, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. How's everything been? You've been pretty manic, man, with a few projects recently, right?
It has been crazy, a good crazy though. Obviously, with the pandemic, everything been going on. I've been trying to stay busy and be as positive as I can. So, finding ways to fill in those cracks, and doing this new book, East Street Archives book has definitely filled some of those voids. And so, yeah, it's been great. It's been a lot of fun. And now we're back to business again and traveling. And so it was a good time spent.
Yeah. Have you been traveling quite a bit recently?
Quite a bit recently. Nothing really foreign. It's all been domestic stuff. I
Okay.
just came off of a shoot last week with Wayne Gretzky and Derek Jeter. We were doing this really cool project where there's a new apparel line, and they wanted some amazing, like, well-lit portraits. So went out to Florida and shot the two of those guys, and that was pretty great because I'd never worked with those guys before. So
How was it? How are they? Were they good to
they're
work with?
really great, very humble. Derek Jeter walks in, shakes everybody's hand, and thankful. And Wayne Gretzky was super humble. They had him on the golf course. He's the great one. But it was really, really fun, and it was nice getting back out in the field and shooting people, and people feeling comfortable being in a place where there's a lot of people, with a production crew going on. It's just nice to be back a little bit.
Yeah. Would you say it was kind of back to normal then? Like
It
people,
feels back
how
to
everyone?
normal. I think it feels back to normal. Like, we've been operating my studio, GLP has been operating since even during the height of the pandemic. And we've had a lot of protocols and nurses and doctors on set. We get tested before and after the shoot. So it's been, the business has been much less, but like when people actually have to do a shoot, we had to follow all the CDC guidelines, and like there's
Yeah.
industry guidelines for the Directors Guild of America, all that stuff. So we've seen that tapering down a little bit. The numbers locally here have gone down quite a bit. And like most of the people I know have already had it, including myself. I've had it
Yeah.
twice now. I've
Oh,
been
have you?
vaccinated, boosted. I've had it twice. And knock on wood, I'm I'm still here and I'm healthy.
Still
So,
good.
yeah. Yeah.
Nice, man. Cool. Well, I'd love to kind of, I guess, jump back to where photography all began and kind of even before that, because you grew up on the beach, like Virginia Beach, didn't you?
Yeah.
And wasn't it skateboarding that kind of kicked it
Yeah,
all
it
off? Would you
was
say?
it was surfing originally.
Okay.
Because growing up on the beach, there wasn't really much to do. I mean, I had a bike and a board, and I'd go to the beach. And honestly, I started out boogieing. I was a boogie boarder because it was easier, and I
Yeah.
did that in the early days. And I had a crew of guys, and we were, they would call us every name in the book: Sponger, Shark Biscuit, whatever it was. We were just like, oh, people making fun of us, but we were good. We were doing drop knees, we were doing off the lips, we were doing big spins, and we got some respect from the surfers. But then I got into photography, and then I started bringing the camera to the beach, mostly from, the beach side. I had a 300 millimeter lens shooting these guys. And all of a sudden the surfers wanted to be my friend. So then I started shooting all the surfers, and instantly all my friends that were the boogie boarders that all had the surfers had mad respect because they knew I'd be shooting photos of them. So, and then I ended up surfing after that. I ended up picking up, but yeah, it was from there came skateboarding.
Would you say like that was why you picked up a camera in the first place, was to shoot surfing? Or were you kind of like looking at the cultural side of things and going, yeah, you wanted to sort of capture what was going on there? Or
What it was, I think originally was a girl I was dating, very young. I was dating at a very young age, and like this girl ended up getting a camera for Christmas and was really devastated that she didn't want a camera. Her parents thought she liked it, and then she just never used it. So I was like, hey, let me take pictures of you. And like, I just something about it I was drawn to. So I started taking photos of her, and I get the film back. I'm like, oh, these are cool. And then I would take pictures, or I'd go around the city taking photos of just whatever kind of called my name, just whatever I felt like, inspired me.
yeah,
So then I put two and two together and like, oh, I'm going to go shoot surfing, my friend's surfing, because that's sick. I love that stuff. And it would be cool to like see how it comes out. If I can freeze that one sick, trick, or like a big, huge, throwing a big slasher on the wave and like seeing all the spray come off of it, because it happens so fast in real time. You just like, you see it for a split second and you're like, it's gone. But if you can capture that one image and you see like the momentum, the trail of where your fins are ripping through the surf, and then you get that spray, that was like what I wanted to see. So I was drawn to that. And that's kind of, you know, then it started there. And then I was just hooked. As soon as I started seeing the film come back, I'm like, yep, this is what I want to do.
And would you find yourself like wanting to shoot more than kind of be out there and be surfing? Or would it just depend on the
Yeah,
conditions?
that was a tough part. And I feel like
I've always thought about that with photographers, videographers, and there's like, man, there must be like, if it's going off and you're just watching.
And that's been honestly my problem my entire life, is that I'll fall in love with something and then I'll want to shoot it. And then I'll not fall out of love at it, but it doesn't have the same, because I'm torn over where do I shoot it? Do I do it? Do I, you know? So yeah, we'd have good swells coming through. And then I'd be like, yep, I had that energy. I'm so excited. I'm quitting my job, or I'm like coming home from school, or I'm like, you know, I'd go surf, and then all my friends were like, dude, are you getting your camera out? What's the deal? Like, oh yeah, one more wave. And I'd catch one. I'd go get my stuff out of the, you know, car, and then I'd shoot. And it did get to a point where I think I surfed less, or I skated less, because I knew the more hours I put in, the chances of getting a better shot would be, you know. And then became the idea of, now that I was shooting all this stuff, and I was shooting some really, really good surfers, a lot of sponsored guys that went on to be very big pros, you know, I'm like, okay, well, I could sell these images to the local surf shops, to the regional magazines, and that could like help pay the way for a better equipment or more film, or
And did you like, was there any sort of thought back then that this would be a career, or you were like,
no,
you know,
not really.
You just want to shoot and kind of.
Yeah, I thought it was a lifestyle. You know, I looked at it like, it's what I want to do. And if if no one else cares about it, it's what I care about. I felt like, you know, and I talk to people about that even today, where I'm like, you know, look, pro surfers, that's, if you're actually a paid professional surfer or snowboarder or skater, right? You're getting paid to do something you would do normally, even if you weren't getting paid. Like, this is your lifestyle. You're doing it because this is what pleases you. This is what you get up for every day. So in photography, for me, is still that. Like, I go do shoots today that I don't get paid for, but I have an idea and I just want to go execute it. And I get so stoked when I'm like, nowadays on the computer, looking at files and like bringing them into Capture One or you know, Camera Raw, and like, and really putting my sauce on it. Yeah. Nothing stokes me out more than that. So yeah, I mean, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, man. And especially when it's sort of, I guess when it's like more of a sort of kind of passion project on that side of things, right? It's obviously different if it's something that you don't want to be doing. And and so where did it kind of go then from, you know, like doing shots? Was that then like trying to get in the magazines for surfing, which then sort of, I guess, opened up into the skate world as well? And
yeah, the skate stuff, it's funny, I never really got anything skate published until much later. Like, I think skating was just something I did. It was for my friends, and I really never, I thought surfing was always first for me. Skating was just like, I was more of a skater than a surfer, so I was just kind of doing that and bringing it out there, and I keeping the film for myself and sharing it with the guys I was shooting. But I never, like, Thrasher was so far out of my range. Yeah, Grant Britton was literally shooting at the same ramp I was shooting at, and I'm this punk little kid, and he's like, I mean, like, I didn't think I even had a chance to do that, you know? I never saw surf photographers shooting when I was shooting surfing. I don't think anybody ever cared. It was weird, because all the great surf shots were West Coast guys from Brazil or from the, you know, LA, or from, you know, West Coast. It was, or like exotic places, girls in bikinis, guys with board shorts all the time. Nobody was paying attention to East Coast snowboard or surfing. So, but yeah, the skate thing was, that was like, for me, I think it was for myself. Like, I felt like, you know, I was actually shooting for some surf magazines back then, getting little small paychecks here and there. But like, I felt like the skate stuff was like, all right, I'm gonna take a break from that, and I'm gonna go shoot what I want to shoot. Nice. But again, it was little money. It was nothing. At the time, it felt like something, because somebody was validating my craft. They're like, oh, we love this image. We're going to pay you $100. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's great. You know? And then, like,
which you would have been stoked with at the time, huh? I would just be
so stoked. Yeah. Because like I said, it was like someone thought I was good at what I did. And then it's so funny, because there's so many stories about this. I just remember, like, I had gotten a big break, and it was like 87, I think it was. And it was going to Puerto Rico, shooting a bunch of pro surfers for this magazine called South Swell. and they were out of Australia. It was a South Swell magazine.
Okay.
And they were doing this story on Puerto Rico, but I guess they had reached out to one of the pro surfers, and the guy was like, hey, I want to use my buddy, Gary. You know, he's this young dude. So it's like, we can get him for nothing kind of thing. And it was the first time I ever flown. So we ended up going there. I had a water housing, like an old Nikonus 5 underwater camera. I had, you know, a couple of long lenses I'd rented and everything. So long story short, we were shooting there. It was going off. It was like January. Swell was firing. Trace Palmas was going off like 20-foot faces. Like, it was insane. Like, I was just like, I was a little boy in a big man's land. I was like, what is going on? I've never seen waves.
Just all wide-eyed in the
oh, yeah.
And, stuff.
And I was just charging. Like, I was swimming out. I basically had to, we went up to Trace Palmas the first day. We woke up and it was like, you could hear the waves from our little cottage, like right off the coast there. And we like look out and it was just like, I'd never seen anything like it other than magazines. So we rushed to the scene. It was like 2 of the surfers like paddled out through this channel at Trace Palmas. And here I am with a boogie board, flippers, and Nikonus. Like, and then I had a leash attached to my leg. And then I had a leash attached to my wrist to a Nikonus underwater camera with 36 exposures in it. And like, I'm like, let's go, dude. I'm like, we're paddling it out. I'm like paddling out through this channel. It took forever to get out there. And as I'm paddling, right? So I got my fins, I'm kicking, I'm paddling. This freaking surfer, he like just gracefully like paddles by me. He's like, you loco, man, loco. And I was like, okay, whatever. I'm crazy. Yeah, sure. And then another guy goes, you crazy, you're crazy. I'm like, what is going on? Why am I crazy? Because I'm on a boogie board. Sure enough, a few minutes later, I'm almost at the point where everybody's kind of sitting there waiting for the next set. And these were like it had to have been like 15-second periods or something. It was like nuts. So all of a sudden you see the horizon start swelling. I'm like, oh, that looks pretty good. And then I hear this cowbell in the distance, like dang, 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 dang. I was like, what is that? So some guy was up on this tower, like signaling for this,
just pointing to the horizon,
the next set. So I'm seeing this 4-wave set come in. I'm like, oh my God, this looks huge. Because from the beach, it looked a certain way. But when I'm out there, it was looked 3 times the size. So the first wave I get over, I'm just like, remember coming over it. And as I get off the top, this other one's already hissing. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm dead. You know, there's no way I'm duck diving this. So I just point it to the left to try to get on the shoulder. And I'm like feverishly like kicking with my fins, pulling. I finally, that shoulder catches me. And I literally ride this thing like a half mile down to the beach, just like holding on for dear life, passing the reef by, like, and I just ate shit at the end, excuse me. And then I get off, and the other surfers that didn't go out because they knew it was too much for them, they're like, dude, we thought you were dead. I'm like, camera was gone.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Well, that was just ripped out, right?
Yeah. So that trip ended up, you know, anyway, I learned a big lesson that day of like, when you should take the time to know what you're getting involved in before you go out there, because it was just too much for me. So I stayed on the beach for the most part and shot. But at the end of that trip, all of our stuff was stolen. We got our car broken into, all the film I had shot, all the camera equipment I had rented. So I ended up taking a 3-year hiatus from photography and thinking it was over. And that was the first real big lesson I learned, was just like, one, having your shit insured, but also don't trust, you know, don't leave things out and about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
and what did you do? Yes. So like during that break, were you like, that was it? You just put the camera down and
yep. I was working at a surf shop, lived above the surf shop, and bounced at a bar next door. So literally I was like, that's all I did. And I surfed and just like was a beach bum. And I remember, and it's funny, I don't even remember the dude's name, but this is what got me back into photography. And it was just one person. I remember there was a 7-Eleven across the street. I was coming back from the 7-Eleven right across by my house, and this dude sees me. And it was a guy who was a really good surfer at the time. He's on his beach cruiser. You know, just come back. He was like, dude, like, what's up? I haven't seen you in a long time. You shooting pictures anymore? I'm like, nah, man, I give it up. You know, I have my shit stolen in Puerto Rico. And he just looked at me. He was like, mistake. He goes, dude, you were really talented. You need to get back into that. He goes, I'm telling you, he's like, you're really good. You can make a career out of it. And I just was like, because he didn't know me. I was like, it's just something that resonated with me. And we said our goodbyes, and it just like, it always stuck. Like somebody thought I was good at something. You know, I didn't hear that often. And I ended up getting a camera down the road. Our surf shop that I was working in ended up getting snowboards. We got snowboards for whatever reason. Yeah. So I ended up getting the snowboards. Like, what the hell is this? And then with the snowboards, all of a sudden we got VHS tapes and we started playing them. And I'm like, this is rad. Like, I actually surf the earth, you know, like this is sick. And it just was like, you know, I forget, it was like Damian Sanders and some of these guys, like hard plates, but they just made it look good. Blue skies, you know, day glow neon. And then it was like Jeff Brushy and Chill. Like, I just was like drawn to it because it was so different.
And this was like what, like 90, you reckon? Or like 91?
Yeah, it had to have been about 90. Yep.
Okay.
So I just started, just a bunch of these magazines, these like tabloid sized magazines started coming to at the same time with the shop, because our shop sold a lot of stuff. So I'm sure, like, you know, it just started happening. So I started getting this Eastern Edge magazine, which I was just like flipping through the pages and like reading it from page to page. And like, I ended up reaching out to the guys at Eastern Edge. I like wrote a letter and sent it to them. And I was just like, hey, I'm this photographer for, you know, in Virginia Beach, shot surfing and skating. It's like, man, I want to come out there. And, you know, if there's ever a need for anybody shooting snowboarding stuff, you know, I'd love to come out to Vermont. So like that ended up happening, which was crazy. Yeah. And there's, again, I could go on for days, the amount of stories, because like I ended up going to Vermont several times. You know, I went with my buddy just visiting, and we had bought a couple stolen boards out of the trunk of one of our friends who was this like notorious town thief, but he's still our friend. And I remember he just showed up one day and he was like, hey, I got these ski board things. Come check them out. And I was like, I knew what they were already. So I was like, he was like, give me $100. You can have everything. I'm like, yep, give him $100. We took it all. We went to the mountain, rode down the top to the bottom of the mountain and killed ourselves the whole way down and loved every second of it. And was like, I was hooked. And then just, you know, by the grace of God, just like moved to Vermont. I just wanted to, I kind of pressed the reset button, so to speak. I wrote about it in the book because I grew up in a way where it was like very dysfunctional family. Really, you know, I dropped out of high school just because of the family situation, and, you know, always thought I was going to be a blue collar, you know, plumber. I was going to do something because I didn't have an education, you know, and I just moved out west. I mean, I moved out to up north of Vermont, and just said I wanted to be a snowboard bum. I'm going to try this, and I'm just going to leave everything I know behind and just have fun, me and a snowboard and a camera. So
did you move out with anything, or was it just that?
I literally a backpack full of clothes and a camera that I had bought, that camera that I ended up, you know, getting when I worked for the surf shop. And my intention was to go there. And I had written a letter to Eastern Edge, so I never heard back from them. So I just like went on a whim and was just like, I'm going to go to Vermont and I'm going to, you know, find a place to stay. And I'm just going to like, almost like going overseas, like people do, and like look at hostels. I had no place to stay. No, I just like, I'm going to go get a job.
Did you know anyone? Did you know any crew over there, or
nobody? So me and my friend Skip, who was like my best friend, we just left and we went, and we were so stoked to get there. And when we got there, literally we had a job and a place to stay within 24 hours.
Wow.
Which is meant to be. And then it just, from that moment on, like as soon as they saw some guy with a camera show up, like there was only 6 guys snowboarding at the time at Killington when I went there. That's it. So I became friends with them because I was a snowboarder, but I was like shooting and learning how to snowboard at the same time.
And like proper outsiders, right? I mean, so you guys would just be sort of looked at as like, who are these bums? What are they doing on the mountain, kind of thing? And
just surfer kids, you know, whatever. Like, yeah. But we did end up meeting a lot of people that were similar to us. They were looking for, you know, something different, and snowboarding was just kind of booming. They're just starting to boom at that point. So we ended up moving into this house it was on East Street in Rutland. That's what East Street was like, the foundation for me really realizing that photography was what I was going to pursue as a career, because that's where the magic started to happen, where I was like shooting all the time. And then the magazines were noticing me. There wasn't a lot of people doing it at the time. So like they took advantage of me, and I took advantage of the situation. So that's just where it all started. So that's why I call the book East Street Archives, because, you know, up in my room, the little desk with a makeshift light table and a loop, and I'm looking at, you know, slides and eggs and, you know, throwing shit in a big dumpster and then making my selects, put them in negative slings and sending them out to the magazines in hopes to actually get something published.
And it was a bit of a notorious party house, wasn't it? I've heard.
Oh my God. Yeah. And it was great. I loved it. I mean, we had people come in through all the time. So we had it was 4 of us in the house, but like there was always 20 of us in there. Like even Pat Bridges, who's, you know, kind of the godfather of snowboarding, you know, worked for Snowboarder for all those years. And now he owns Slush magazine. He was on my couch all the time and spent the night all the time and partied every day with him. And it was just a scene. And it was funny because you look back at it, and even though it was our scene, and something that went by. It felt like so fast. I don't think we ever appreciated how much of a scene it was and how special it was at the time.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so cool to be able to have a book like that and be able to like put, 400 plus pages together and just say, hey, here's a yearbook, or here's like, it's meant to those times. It might not have been the greatest photos. It might not be, the sickest tricks, but it's like, here you are in that outfit from the 90s, hanging out, doing the best you can to ride. We were inspired by, think about the inspiration, right? You look now and like all the kids and who they could look up to, and they could see who was before them and learn from them. Back then, there's a handful of people you could look to and look up to and try to emulate what the tricks they were doing. And the tricks were very new, and nobody was spinning more than a 360 when we first got into it. Now you can't even count the revolutions. People are in the pipe or off a jump. But it's really
cool. And was it progressing like super quickly as well?
I mean, it didn't feel like that. It was new, and I felt like, companies, there was like 220 snowboard companies at the time in the 90s, from like 93 to 98, 99. There was like a ton of companies. They were all trying to figure it out. Everybody was pressing boards. Everyone had boots and bindings. So they all wanted us to try their stuff. So it's like we had free stuff. I mean, we'd never paid for anything. Burton was like, hey, here's the Vader backs, high backs, mid backs, low backs, no backs, baseless. And then we would break shit and turn it in. Yep, that didn't work. Scratch that off. And we were like crash test dummies. We were like, testing product. And, we were throwing ourselves around the hill, like sliding stuff, grinding shit, bonking things, like trying to do the best we can. We didn't have a lot of powder days. So we had to make do with whatever terrain it was that we had.
And then was that sort of the like opening up to like media, and then like more magazines coming involved in the scene, and
so that
all those brands, right? Then that just kind of opens it all up, doesn't it?
Yeah, that magazine that I had reached out to, we ended up meeting them. I met them. It was Andy Sergenis and Neil Korn at the time. They ran this really popular East Coast magazine called Eastern Edge, and I met them. And they're like, "You're the guy." Oh, no way. From Virginia Beach. Yeah. And then I just started submitting images, and they started using my stuff all the time, like cover shots. And I was just getting paychecks, and that's what I ended up shooting. I ended up becoming like a picture at that magazine, and I ended up being the photo editor and director at one point, and ended up living at the magazine with those guys. So I really spent many, many years being kind of like an employee or a staff shooter for Eastern Edge. And with that opened up doors to the bigger magazines like Transworld and Snowboarder. And they wanted my shots as well. So I had submissions going everywhere and getting little checks here and there and buying more film and lenses. And, that's what I used to be able to kind of like grow.
It sounds like what a fun time, right?
It was a crazy time. And again, there's something to be said about, shooting your friends, like snowboarding. It could be anything, snowboarding, surfing, skating. And to be able to have somebody recognize that and be like, yeah, we want to use this on the cover of a magazine. I'm like, what? Yeah. And then so your friend's stoked, you're stoked, you're getting a paycheck. You're like, it's that. And it still never gets old, even to this day. I mean, I still shoot stuff. I see a billboard with my image on it, and I'm like, still go, yeah, that's cool. There was that shot. It's
really, you don't get kind of like not blasé about.
I mean, not as much as I used to, just because I've been doing it for so long.
Yeah. So like looking back now, I guess over those years, I mean, what sort of stood out as kind of some of your fondest memories?
Wow. I think knowing then what I knew then and what I know now, it was the anticipation and the not knowing what I was really shooting until I got the film back. Like shooting analog, like I'd shoot stuff and I know I'd see it real time, and I knew my settings I thought were good, but you'd get your film back sometimes and the lab would screw up, or you'd miss the shot, or it was out of focus, or it was a little late. So I think that there was that anticipation I miss, because right now I'm seeing everything in real time. It's like I'm making adjustments on the fly and over, and the magic's done. I'm not waiting for it anymore. And I'm on to the next shoot. So back in the day, I would go shoot stuff back then, and I get psyched and I'm stoked for a week and a half before I get my film back. I'm like, in my mind, I'm having dreams. Like, I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be good. And either you're let down or you're stoked beyond belief. So that part I miss. And I also miss the simplicity of not having, just doing what I want to do. Wake up when I want to wake up. I'd have minimal equipment. So I didn't have like everything in the world. I mean, the amount of equipment I have now, I could shoot a feature film and like, it's just too much stuff, like multiple cameras. And like back then I had a camera, a couple lenses, a flash, and like I made the most out of it. And now it's like, am I shooting with the red? I have like 4 different red cameras. I've got like, I mean, I've got everything, but it's like, now it's like, am I shooting motion? Am I shooting stills? Am I shooting a combination of both? And like, it just gets to be too many options. It's like all you can eat buffet versus like, hey, here's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I miss the simplicity of it a lot. But I still have the same passion about putting a camera over my, in front of my eye and capturing those moments, because, still photography to me, it's just like being able to freeze a moment in time that you can always look back at and it'll jog so many memories. It really does. I do love film. I love directing, but I love photography even more. I love being able to capture a single frame in one, millisecond,
Yeah. And when did you sort of think back then that you wanted to kind of do something different outside of the snowboarding industry?
Oh, well, I was forced into that one because I never thought I was going to leave snowboarding. It was snowboarding for life for me. It was like, this was my career. And I was dating a girl for years. We had a long distance relationship. I met her at the mountain first day I moved to Killington. I met this girl and I was just drawn to her because she was a New England girl, so different from the Virginia Beach girls that I had dated before. This girl was like very, independent and like just had her shit together, so to speak. And I was in head over heels with this girl. So anyway, we stayed together for a while, but she was living in Boston. I was living in Vermont. I was traveling all over shooting. So she ended up getting pregnant. And I mean, talk about change. I was like, what am I going to do? I didn't know anybody who was a father at that time other than my dad.
How old were you?
So I was like, huh?
How old were you at the time?
What, 26, maybe?
Okay.
Yeah. And I was just like, wow, what am I going to do? And like, you have those thoughts of like, oh, I'm just going to run away. And I live on a couch. I don't even have a car. What am I going to do? Like, I have no responsibility. I can't raise a kid. I can barely raise myself. So I faced a lot of that. And then she was like, she was very much put together and had a job and at the time. So I had made my mind up. I was going to leave snowboarding. I was at the US Open. I think it was the 2000 US Open and could have been the 99 US Open. No, when was my kid born? I don't even remember. I'm sorry. It was still in the 90s, the late 90s. I was at the US Open. I was shooting. It might have been 98. And I remember finishing up it was the last run, like Terrier's last run or something. And I ended up shooting it. And I had this feeling as I'm walking away from leaving the pipe there, just thinking, man, that was a fun ride. That was a good run. I really enjoyed that. And, I got to find something else that I equally love as much as that. That was it for me. And as I was walking to go to my car, I was going to go use the bathroom in the Stratton Lodge. And I see one of my friends, Jamie Meiselman. Jamie Meiselman was the editor of Trans World Magazine. So he was like, yeah, Gary, what's up? And I see him and I was like, hey, he's like, what have you been doing? And I told him, I was like, yeah, man, I'm having a kid. Like, this was it. Done. Like, this is the last picture I'm taking snowboarding. I got to go I'm going to go find a job in Boston and, be a man, and he was like, you say Boston? I was like, yeah. And he was like, really? He was like, you got 10 minutes? I'm like, sure. And he goes, let me use the bathroom. Meet me in the cafeteria. So I go to the cafeteria. He sits down. He goes, man, I just quit Trans World and a company just hired me as their, CMO or like to run this snowboard company. And we're moving to Boston and running the operation out of Boston. You should come work for me. He goes, do you have any customer service skills? I'm like, no. He's like, yeah, you do. You'll be fine. So I ended up getting a job being the customer service manager for this company called Generics and Blacks. So it was like a board and a boot company. And they were all from, it was from Germany.
Okay.
I worked there for 4 years. This guy saved my life, literally provided an amazing salary. I still was able to shoot snowboarding because we had a snowboarding team. So I was still traveling, yet I was getting paid to do it. And I mean, dude, I owe a lot to him because it opened up my mind, gave me a corporate job, which then allowed me to get the next corporate job. And then from there on, I went from there to Solomon. I worked at Solomon for a while, shooting for them. And then I got a job at Reebok, and I worked at Reebok for 8 years as a photographer, shooting some of the biggest celebrity athletes, entertainers in the world. And they didn't have an internal photographer at the time, so they didn't know anything about it. So it's just like I got thrown to the wolves. Like every day I was going somewhere else, shooting people like 50 Cent, Jay-Z, Allen Iverson, freaking like you name it. It was just like we had hundreds upon hundreds of like A-list athletes, and it was just like Gary will shoot him, Gary will shoot him. And that's how I built my portfolio and learned how to. I basically took my skills as a fast-paced action photographer in the extreme sports world, and then kind of took it into now this lifestyle brand. And I remember it's funny because I really wanted to be taken seriously at Reebok. You know, I wanted to get more opportunities, and some people were like some of the guys in charge weren't really like on my side, so to speak. So I remember getting a meeting with the chief marketing officer of Reebok. I really want to show you my portfolio, and it was something I was really about because it was all skate and snowboard stuff. So like he made an appointment. I go in there and I had this really nice hand printed portfolio that I had made with all my prints. And I was super proud of it, like almost to the point where I was cocky. And I remember sitting down at his desk and giving him my portfolio, and he's like flipping through it. Like I'm like, oh, that's a good, just like right through it. Just like, that's a good one. And he gets to the end and he's like, is that all you have? And I was like, yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's it. And he was like, great snowboard and skateboard surfing shots, but like I'm a lifestyle brand. I need people. Like, do you have portraits of them? Like, I just was like, no. And I remember leaving his office feeling deflated, man. Like, wow, I suck. Like this guy hates me. But then the light bulb came on. It was like, all right, well, just use that as ammo to go out and shoot other things, And that's what I did. I started like, going out and shooting guys at the basketball court at lunch break at Reebok. And I would shoot close-up shots of the shoes and people's portraits. And then I mean, I know I'm gonna keep running on, but like I got my real break at Reebok when there was a shoot for Allen Iverson, and I was asked to go like watch this thing. It was like a huge photographer by the name of David Harry Stewart at the time. He was the photographer that was shooting. And I go there, brought my little Pentax K1000, the roll of Tri-X, and like in hopes that I might get a glimpse of him, and I'm watching this guy. He's got his, assistant set up, and they got these big power packs with strobes, and it's like, he's yelling and barking orders at people. There's like just everything was so massive, this huge production. I was very much like, holy cow, this guy knows his crap, And
yeah,
I remember he saw me with a camera, and then he goes to somebody, he goes, tell that guy to get out of here. He can't be in here with a camera. This is my set. Blah, 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 blah. So he kicked me out.
Really?
Yeah. And then so I go outside and I see this other photographer pacing back and forth. And he was a photographer for Esquire magazine. And he was hoping to get a shot of Allen for this Esquire article. And he had this little white 4-foot or 9-foot seamless setup by this rock wall in this gym, like where we were shooting. Yeah. And he was just like talking to his editor. Oh, I'm hoping he's going to come out here. So I overhear people in the hallway, Iverson's people going, yeah, I think we're going to bring him to this Esquire shoot. We'll get him out there, let him have 10 minutes. And they left the guy hanging and didn't tell him. So my mind starts turning, and being the punk kid that I was like, I'm going to get to Allen through this guy. So I go, hey, buddy. Hey, I'm Gary. I work for Reebok. Hey, listen, would you do me a favor? Would you let me get some shots over your shoulder? If I bring Allen out here, if Allen comes out here, will you let me get a couple shots? Because, dude, if you get Allen out here, you can do whatever the hell you want. So I knew. So Allen comes out. I ended up getting over this guy's shoulder through this little slit of like paper, and I got these amazing portraits of Allen, black and white, no shirt on. He's got these big chains, and he's like just these cool poses. And I went to my house. I developed them that night. Like when we got back into the city, I went to my house, I had a dark room in my closet, and man, I just like went to town, and I had some prints. The next day I had prints in my office, like some 8x10s, just like pinned into the like cushion on the wall. And no one said anything. The next day I go in, they're gone. I'm like, dude, who took my pictures? And then I get a call from the president's secretary. she'd like to see you in her office right away. I was like, oh shit, I'm going to get in trouble.
You're just thinking,
Yeah.
you're
So
in the
like,
doghouse,
I'm going to
right?
be in trouble. So I go, and this lady who was the president at the time was like literally a tyrant. Like people did not like her at all. She was very mean. So I remember go sit in her office. I'm super nervous. I'm shaking. And she has this manila envelope. She looks at me. She throws it on the thing. Is this yours? And I open it up. It's those prints. I'm like, yeah. She goes, where did you get those from? I'm like, I took them. What do you mean you took them? I'm like, well, and I told her the situation. She just laughs. And she's like, can I use them? I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I'd love to use these for this regional ad we got going on here. And I'm like, sure. She goes, cool, sign right here. All right, see you later. Bam. Next thing I know, about 3 weeks later, inside Rolling Stone ad. It was like 2 pages in. There's my shot.
You're kidding.
Like, no. And I was just like,
that's sick.
I was like, what? And then it just from that moment, and Reebok had me shooting everything. The president was like, yep, he's good enough shooting Rolling Stone. He's going to shoot it all. I mean, I shot everything. So I built my career shooting all this stuff for Reebok. And then I ended up getting fired in 2006 for doing a shoot with Lance Armstrong for the cover of Runner's World. It was like a weekend shoot in Austin, Texas, had nothing to do with Reebok. Ended up shooting it. 3 weeks later, my boss pulls me into a room and has to fire me because we had just gotten, go back, Reebok got sold to Adidas. So Adidas now owned us. And I guess Nike had a videographer go to this Lance Armstrong shoot, which was a Livestrong shoot, and shoot some behind the scenes. It was a Livestrong Runner's World cover. So he was wearing a Livestrong bracelet, had the Nike shirt on. So they sent a photographer or video guy to shoot video. And then it was up on Nike's homepage. So I didn't even know that. So the president of Adidas go, isn't that our photographer? Like shooting Lance Armstrong for Nike?
Oh, wow.
So they fired me literally on the spot. So I just remember like all those years, at 8 years, lost all my severance, all insurance, everything I had known. I had 4 kids at the time. So the scaredest I was telling my wife I got fired. So she's like, well, I guess you're going freelance. I'm like, damn right I am. And I ended up going freelance within 2 days. I had a little office, an employee, and I just put myself out there in the world as a freelance photographer, and I started getting work. And the greatest one was I did a shoot for Adidas World Cup campaign, traveled all over the world, went to Portugal, went to Argentina, I went everywhere. And I shot these amazing, all a medium format, like Hassie digital shots. And like they ended up, we had this wrap dinner with the president of Adidas, Herbert Heiner, and some of these other guys, and we're sitting there, and then, thank you so much. These shots are amazing. It's gonna be a great campaign. It was an amazing campaign, by the way, one of my favorites. So they're hearing my story, and I tell them, yeah, I got fired from Adidas when I worked for Reebok because I had shot. They knew the whole story and couldn't believe I was the same guy they hired and just paid more money to me in that one shoot that I made my whole salary for a year. But it was just like, I'm sure that somebody from that meeting tells a story like, yeah, this guy we fired at Reebok we ended up hiring him and didn't even know it was the same guy to do our whole Adidas like World Cup campaign, soccer. Yeah.
And like when you started freelance, like was that just contacts that you already built up through those 8 years at Reebok? And
I ended up getting an agent.
I
got an agent right away because I had so much content for Reebok that it just was stuff that it looked like
the portfolio would have been amazing, right?
Oh, it looked like I had been a shooter on my own for years. So like they were like, yeah, I'll take you. You're the one who did this campaign and that campaign. Yeah, that was all me. So I was lucky. I mean, just being in the right place at the right time and having an agent. So, I've had the same agent now for 14 years. But the thing is, I end up getting more of my own work now than they get me just because of the contacts I've built over the years. And, they're like, probably, they're in a weird transition themselves, but we're still very tight. I'm still with them. And, but it's still fun. It's just as fun now as it was in the 90s when I first started.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just different.
And how did it then go from like doing different projects? I guess like because you've had a cover, like you've had 3 books, which you published. And when did that kind of all start? Were you like sort of thinking you kind of collecting and you getting on all this work that you were putting together, right? Did you just think, it would be cool to
I didn't at the time.
have it in a book or?
Yeah, definitely. So when I was at Reebok still, the first idea for the book was the Allen Iverson book, because I had 10,000 images of Allen, just because he liked me and I was his photographer. He didn't want to shoot with anybody else. So I had built this relationship with him. So I was sitting on a gold mine of Allen Iverson images. Mm-hmm. And the problem was that his management and Reebok at the time, I tried to do a book. I literally twice as I was there while he was still a player. And it just fell by the wayside. It was like, it would start up, it would build all this hype, and then it would just die out. And so I never did a book at Reebok. And then I ended up leaving. And the Born to Play Baseball book was the first book I did. If you can see it, this is Born to Play Baseball. It's in Spanish, part Spanish. Nacido para jugar baseball. And it's the size of a plate, like a base. So I thought that'd be cool, as doing a square base. And then what I also did was I took out the binding and I did baseball stitches, like to bind all of the pages, which was pretty neat. So, and it's like the paper and stuff. It's a pretty cool book. So you just got, different, it's all just really photos. If you can see that. But that was the first book I did. And again, that was a promo piece that I ended up sending out to people for nothing. But I'm still sitting on some of those. But I did that when I went on my own years after I had already been successful, and I had, I had some money in the bank, because I knew that was going to cost me a good amount of money. So I did that book. And then I just had a good experience with doing it. And then fast forward all these years later with the Allen Iverson book, I had heard Allen was going to go into the Hall of Fame. He was going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I'm like, man, I can't believe Reebok still hasn't done a book. I have the desire, the passion to do it, all the images to do it, the contacts. I've already started work previously. So I had like the forward that I loved already set. So I said, okay, that's it. I'm going to fund this book. I ended up reaching out to, Reebok, got their permission, the NBA got their permission. Everybody was like, yep, on board. And I just put it together literally in like 2 months.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then that book again too was pretty special. That's right here. It's they sold out pretty quickly, but I love like slip cases. And this was like a foil slip case with AI. So I just did the logo. And then you got, little foil.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so it's a pretty fun book. It's got a lot of different, shots and stories and quotes from different riders, back into snowboarding now, from different basketball players. And I really wanted to show Allen in the light that I knew him, because he's a very controversial player. A lot of people talked negative on him, like he had a bad rap, but I had saw a different side of Allen. I saw him as a friend, I saw him as a father, and as one of the best, basketball players on the planet. So the images I took kind of represented that, and I wanted to put that out there in a good way. And it really, really was great. He loved it. I got to actually give him one at the ceremony in Springfield at the Hall of Fame ceremony. And then, that was like a really big book project that I did. So I have now 2 books underneath my belt. And when the pandemic hit, I was like, what am I going to do with my time? Because I'm a global international traveler. I'm shooting for Apple and this place. I'm going to India and New Zealand, Portugal, wherever. I'm shooting all over the place. Now
it all just stopped, right?
Like even domestically, everything's just shut down. Yeah. And I have to be doing stuff. I can't just sit around. And I never was at home. So it was like that felt weird. So I remember passing by one of my closets in my basement where I keep all my film, and I just saw that, the light was on. I saw the word snowboarding through the crack in the door, and I opened it up, and I'm just looking at all these bins that say snowboarding, unorganized bins and stuff. And I just went to bed that night, and I think I had a dream that I was holding people's memories hostage in my closet. Like they don't remember anything. So I got up the next day and I started going through all these bins and I broke out my light table, my old copy stand with a camera and a computer. And I just said, I'm going to start scanning some of these images. And that's what ended up happening. I just was and then every time I scan an image, I was remembering. I was like, oh man, I remember that. I remember this.
It would just open up another door, right? You kind of.
And then, so as I'm scanning, I'm getting all these hundreds of images. I'm going in, dust busting, cleaning them up and making them presentable. And I was like, man, yeah, it's time. I got to do this coffee table book. I've got the experience. I got a little bit of money. I can do it. I can fund it up front. And people just need this, especially now with like how everybody's feeling depressed. It's just a bad state. So they want to have these amazing memories, right?
Yeah.
So then I talked to the printer. I talked to everybody. I realized how long it was going to take. It was going to be about a year. And I said, okay, well, God, I'm on Instagram all the time. What a great platform. I can start up the book platform. I can basically start creating this, Instagram account to build awareness for the book and to create this like family, this kind of like, I'm going to lost for words, but a community,
like a community, right? Yeah.
Basically find, create this community. Will one support that was a part of the book and would support it. So that's what I did. I started this. I called it East Street Archives, started making like 3 or 4 posts a day of all these old images, and people were like flocking to it. Like what? And then people had never had Instagram accounts, weren't on social media. I started getting them into it. I started talking to them, calling them up. Hey, you got to go on this. I basically instructed them on how to, download, get an app, Instagram, log in, get your account. I don't want to be on social media. I'm like, no, trust me. You can look at what you want to look at. So I've been.
Were you calling up all your old friends then, and just sort of saying like,
and then
hey guys, get on there and like just trying to get their thoughts on things and get some stories out of them, right, for the book. And
it ended up being a thing where like someone would comment and then other people would comment on their comment. It was like people were starting to actually reconnect through this Instagram account.
Yeah,
which I was like Facebook. What Facebook was built for. Now I'm doing it on Instagram.
Yeah, and
I was doing it all myself, which I'm still doing all myself. And then I just, as I was doing this and building the book and, I kind of said right off the bat, hey, I'm doing this because I'm building a book. It's going to take a while, but like, here's some images that get you, get your mouth savored for so what it's going to be like. And now here we are all these, a year and a half later. And, most of the books are now, the remaining books are now like in New York City, sitting at port, waiting to clear customs. I'm going to be getting them in the next couple of weeks. And everyone's going to start, start filling all the orders of people that have already ordered the book.
Cool.
And that book's pretty crazy. I mean, that's like, you've seen, it's very thick.
Isn't it like 430 something pages, right?
437. Yeah. Yeah. So it's nice. Like pretty cool, pretty thick book. I mean, comparatively speaking to the Iverson book, it's pretty good size.
Nice. Yeah. And didn't you guys like, there was a like you were raising money for like through the book with Burton, right? Like wasn't there like the Chill Foundation that you guys did? And
yeah, so the Chill Foundation thing, so I had meetings at Burton to talk about the book to see if they were interested in carrying it, really. I mean, because it wasn't a Burton book. It's got different, riders, different companies, but I know that they might have been interested in just the contents in itself of being just nostalgic, vintage snowboarding, from back then. And it was a great meeting. They were all about it. They're like, yeah, we love this. We'll definitely carry it in the store. And we just started talking about ways to, raise money for Chill and for other, things. And again, I think I'm not sure the books that they bought, if they're going to use some of that for donating to Chill, but the idea of doing snowboards came out with some of the images. I'm like, yes, absolutely. And so that's what we did, was we started, designing boards. I reached out to one of the old pro snowboarders, Seth Neary. He's a designer. And I was like, hey, got this opportunity to do a few boards for Burton for this, cool foundation for Chill, raise some money. And he was like all about it. He's like, yeah, this would be sick, and we just picked a couple of images that, one that said East Coast and riders that people could resonate with on the East Coast that, they had an attachment to. And that's what we did. We built the boards, and then we got a couple of events, and we did these 3 events and raised almost $30,000 with 9 boards.
Nice.
Which was pretty cool. So yeah, it's just like, and it went by so fast, even though there was a lot of pre-production, so to speak. I just feel like now that it's done, I'm like, oh my God, what's next? Because like, ideally I started this Instagram account for the book, but it's turned into somewhat of a brand. And I want to be able to have a voice for other people. So I think the future of East Street Archives is to share images and stories from other photographers, and like, especially photographers that shot film during the 80s, 90s, I've got some really cool stuff in the works. I got another book that I'm working on that's like a 2-year project that'll feature like 50 different photographers, which are really cool.
Nice.
Really cool stuff.
Are you going to do, would you do a movie on it, you reckon? You do a documentary about it?
Yes. And I was about a year and a half ago, I set out, it was a summer, and I set out to interview guys. So I took, we set up, I had this beautiful canvas muslin, got in the truck with a red camera, and we went, and I think we shot 20 people, 20 different influencers from the 90s, and just talked about 90s snowboarding. And it was just like, what it was like for them to start, and like, stories that they remember, talking about, the difference in products from then and now, and then like how they feel about snowboarding now. And it was really cool. One, it was just great to reconnect with all those guys I hadn't talked to in years and see that they're, everybody's getting older, wiser. They're not the party animals that they once were. Some are, but most of them aren't. But yes, I think, as I look back and kind of go through the edits of some of these interviews that I conducted, it's like, man, there's something there, like a cool little, like, Netflix piece, on that time.
Yeah.
It's funny, like Dear Rider came out and that was very successful, but like there was a documentary on Tom Sims that people were putting together. It never saw the light of day. They were trying to do a Kickstarter for it. They didn't raise the money. So it never happened. So I kind of want to know more about that, because that's a huge one. I mean, Tom Sims was, the guy was right there with Jake. I mean, he was the West Coast version, and those guys were, I wouldn't say they were pretty good friends. I don't know that for a fact, but I know that they definitely respected the shit out of each other, and they were both doing really cool stuff. So to answer your question, I definitely think that there's a long form piece there. I'm going to continue to put out the small little interviews I have, just so people can kind of see their old friend and hear from them, because I think that's cool. But I'm definitely working on some longer form piece too. Yeah.
Nice. And when I find what kind of like looking back now, I mean, like if you could, I guess, give advice to sort of any upcoming people who are either if they're interested in photography, what would you sort of recommend, or like what would you say, kind of going from inside, I guess, action sports to then outside, and
I think to me, I've spoken at a lot of different institutions and colleges, photography, schools about, and similar questions get brought up, what advice do you have? And I'm like, to me, it's like, just shoot all the time. Just keep shooting. Always have a camera by you. Shoot what you want to shoot. Don't worry about what people want you to shoot, but shoot what you want to shoot. And then that'll always, when you're passionate about something and you capture something that means something to you, somebody out there is going to feel that. And then it's going to resonate with them, and then they're going to want to hire you. Even if it's not even related, they're just going to want to meet you and want to see what makes you tick. I mean, that happens a lot. But photography is not a job. Even though it's my job, don't ever, if you go into it thinking that's my career, I want to, it's not, it's like, you got to want it. It's got to be in your blood. I think it's just got to be something that you just want to do regardless. Like you have a job and you're like, I can't wait to get home, get my camera and go shoot stuff. That's how it should feel. If it feels like that, then photography is right for you, or cinematography. Like, again, like I said earlier, I'm a photographer first. Even though I direct a ton, I just, something about having that still camera in my hand and capturing images. And again, don't get me wrong, I love digital so much. I mean, I'm getting instant gratification. I know I said like, oh, the analog days. I still shoot film. I just shot a commercial recently on 16 millimeter movie film. And I screwed up on a couple of, on 100 foot of that, it's like overexposed. And it felt good, even though it was disastrous. I'm like, yeah, that's right. That's what happens. That's part of it. So learning, shooting more, getting out there and experiencing the world through a lens is incredible. And there's so many tools now you can do that with. The iPhone is a powerful tool. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the iPhone. I think you can get amazing quality images and even actually printable images. I'm shooting billboards for Apple on an iPhone on this.
Really?
Yeah.
No way.
And I just shot my third campaign for Apple, and it was all on the iPhone 13 Pro, and it was with the macro lens. So literally all I did was shoot hockey inspired images on the iPhone using a macro. And then
It's insane. I always thought they say that they do that, but it's
no,
like, you know.
it's for real. That's my third Apple commercial I shot with iPhones, and it's all iPhones. I was in India shooting all iPhones, and I had to gimbals and makeshift gimbals with painter's poles and like weird stuff. I was trying to rig a drone with a phone, it just couldn't work. We tried it. I think it was crashing, but they were okay with, like, if their whole thing is like, it definitely has to be shot on iPhone, but if somebody could, if anybody could do what you're doing, like if they have access to an app, they have access to a gimbal or something that you're doing, then it's okay. If it was something that was like studio quality lighting and no, they're not into that. Yeah. But it is powerful. And I tell kids all the time, like, dude, you already have a camera. You don't need a camera. Start out with that and build an Instagram account, build a following, and you're good. But as weird of advice as that is, and actually if I think about me saying that, it's weird, but it's just true.
So are you excited about all, like, how that technology is advancing? And
like, I am. It's a little scary. I mean, the AI thing is nuts to me, but yeah, because I love technology. I love advancements in, you know, even just like computers. Like I see Photoshop, and like one of my retouchers was just showing me the other day, like the face liquefy tool in Photoshop now, and how scary that is. Holy crap. Like with just sliders, you can like adjust the forehead or the eyes, and like, and it's not, you don't even have to select it. It automatically recognizes the face and does all these things to it. I'm like, I remember I just had a dust bust, just dust busting tools with a clone stamp was like an advancement. And then you got like I mean, there's so many great things, you know, the content aware scale, like I can go on for days, because I used to beta test for Photoshop way back when, like they were using my images. I would like get, you know, I'd get CDs, like when Photoshop came in a CD kit and you had to install it, I was actually getting some of that stuff. But yeah, to answer your question, technology, advancements, technology, I'm all about it. Like bring it on. Like it just makes everyone's lives easier, and you get instant fulfillment, you know, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But having the knowledge of film and the way it was done old school, I just gives you much more ammunition and appreciation.
Gives you an advantage, right? And you kind of
an appreciation of the craft, because it, you know, when we were involved in photography in the 80s and 90s, the art community didn't look at photography as an art. It just didn't. It's like, it's photography, it's not an art. Well, guess what? What ended up happening? Now photography is completely an art, especially the printmaking and tintypes and daguerreotypes and glass plates, wet plates, all that stuff is like completely an art form. Wish I could do more of that. I wish more companies would be like, yeah, let's shoot film. Instead, they're like, yeah, can I get that 6 terabyte drive to go, you know, after the shoot? I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem.
In like 12 hours or whatever they want it in. They're like
insane. But that's the life we live in. So either you're embracing it and you're going with it, or you're not working. So I want to keep working as long as I can, and I have to go with the times and be and look at every job and treat every job that I get, no matter if I'm into it or if I'm passionate about it. I got to treat it like it's the last job I'll ever have. You know, it's just it's important.
That's the nature of the industry, though, right? Would you say, like, kind of?
Yeah. You have to be, if you put yourself in a perspective of an art buyer or a creative director, right? You're going to want to hire someone, one that's going to let you also be collaborative in the process. You want to be able to hang out with that guy. You want to be able to like that person, not feel intimidated by them. You want to be able to go have a nice dinner or drink with them after the fact and have something in common. So that is a real thing. So personality, I think, in the success of being a commercial director or photographer is very, very important. And even if you don't want to go do that wrap dinner, you got to force yourself to do it and then take a deep breath afterwards, exhale and decompress. But like, it's important for FaceTime these days. It's important to actually be in the presence of someone and enjoy the collaboration process. Let someone be heard. And like, you know what, even if you have like, I really want this shot, I want to do it. Sure, that's fine. But make sure you're getting what the client wants. Because in the end, it's not about having that job that you get, but it's like getting the next job from them, building a relationship.
Yeah, that's it.
It's important.
Cool, man. And what's the best way if people want to kind of get hold of the book, follow what you're up to, find out what's going on? And
so what's next? Well, I have a few Instagram handles, but at Gary Land, is my Insta handle. I feel like I do at East Street Archives. I end up doing more posts on that these days than I do on my own Instagram handle. Yeah, at Gary Land or at East Street Archives. And then the website is just garyland.com or eaststreetarchives.com. Yeah, but definitely I appreciate you giving me a follow, and I try to put up cool nostalgic stuff from back in the day and some of the stuff I'm currently working on, and it's all over the place.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Gary,